I have 3 little bodies, and they're all ready to get ahead. Get ahead in the world, pardon the pun. I just have to show you one thing that took my fancy as I was working on this one. I decided that a row of buttons would be quite wonderful. And so these aren't actually buttons. They're from an upcycled thrift shop necklace that was it must have been very scratchy and uncomfortable, because these are beads. They're punched out from shells, and but they make just perfect buttons. I also decided that this little one needs to have shoelaces on their shoes, so I used 2 strands of crochet cotton and basically just tied them on, stitched them on as if I was tying shoes. And I loved the whole button thing so much that this little bear ended up with buttons on them too. So those buttons, and I always put a heart on the bears because they're all about love. So anyhow, let's get on to the head. So remember, the head is basically a ball, and so I'm going to do the black panda bear's head, which of course is all white. So I'm going to start by stitching the center back together, and I've got lots and lots and lots of yarn. So I think what I'll do is I'll use this, a very long piece, and then that'll get we'll get that center stitched together. And then I do the gathering after I have stitched the center back of the head together. And stitching the center back of the head is exactly the same as stitching the center back of the body and the legs. So you go from one side to the other, picking up a stitch. I'll just move that body out of the way. Picking up a stitch on either side and pulling up on it. That one looks like it needs to be tucked in again, so I'm going to just stitch through that one more time. And I work my way across, back and forth, from, whoops, got thread joining in, yarn joining in here, and this will close up the center back. Because this is quite bulky yarn, I am going through each of there's 2 loops from being held together, and so I'm going through one of each of the loops at a time. I need to pull down on that, that's so long. And just working across. Get those ends, I'm just going to hold them inside. They're too short to be, they're neither use nor ornaments, so they'll just go inside. And oops, that should have gone in that direction, not there. So you're always pointing across. So as you see, I'm pointing back in this direction here, and I will end by picking up the loop at the top of the that I secured with a pin. So I'm going to pick that up, and now I'm going to take my needle around the edge to gather it, pulling up as I go. And I pull up on it, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around a second time, and I'm going to pick up every other stitch to fill in that gap, because the head can be a little gappy at the top or the bottom. See how that closes that in so nicely when you skip one stitch that you had gone across around there. And so now I go back through that set of loops just to really anchor that and close it up nicely. There we go. There, and I'm back at the center back. Now I'm going to take the thread out of the needle, and I'm now going to move to the bottom of the head, the neck edge. That'll be, the other one was the top of the head, and I'm going to stuff the head. Grab some more stuffing, and I'm going to stuff it fairly firmly. One more little clump. Okay, and now I'm going to take the end that's here, and I'm going to stitch around just the same way that I did the top of the head by going into each of the loops around. Okay, that one's not wanting me to go in it very easily. Okay, so I'm going through each of the loops and pulling up as I go. And just like I did on the top, I'm going to then, my second pass around will be through every other set of loops, and that will close things up quite nicely. Then the head is going to get stitched to the body, and I want to show just an alternative way of doing the embellishments. I like to make the bears unique, and one of my passions is tatting, and so I will often just tat random motifs. Okay, that's once, so now we go through every other set of stitches. Yeah, so anyhow, I like to do random tatted bits when I'm out and about. I always have tatting with me in a pocket, because you never know when you'll have a moment that you can tat. Okay, so I'm going to now dig in and bring the stuffing down to make the head more pleasingly round and ball-like. Don't like the way that stitch is sticking out, so I'm going to take my felting needles and just tidy that up a bit. Sometimes you'll get funny little shapes and things, and it's like, ooh, don't like that. Okay, so now if you wanted the panda to just be Panda Perfect like this, like the pink one, then you would just go ahead and sew the head on. But I want to add a bit of tatting to be a collar for my panda. So I tatted this very cheerful and colorful motif, and it's going to be a collar for the panda. So I have my yarn coming out at the center back of the panda, of the head, And so I'm going to start by holding the panda with the center back of the body and the center back of the head together. And now I will stitch through the body and back to the head. Another way to put a collar on, of course, is like the ribbon on this bear. You can just sew lace around the head afterwards, around the neck, or a ribbon, whatever you like. But this works really well when you have a round motif like this one is. This one came from a vintage tatting book that my daughter found in the thrift shop and was quite excited to find that for me. Okay, and so you just keep stitching and pulling up quite firmly. Okay, collar, come back down, please. You need to pull on the collar to make sure it's behaving itself too. And the panda will, of course, get a heart sewn onto their chest as well once everything else is done. So the order of assembly is the first finish the body, then the head, and sew the head on. Then you'll sew the arms in place on the body, and finishing up with the bear's nose and ears. And the eyes will go on. The eyes and mouth are embroidered last. So I'm going to go one more round around and just make sure that this little bear is nice and sturdily constructed. Sometimes I actually, with like this bear, the bulky yarn is, because this is 100% wool, it can be really stiff to bring the needle through. So sometimes I will actually use a pair of needle nose pliers to encourage the needle to come back through. Okay, so this little bear is there, and what I'll do is I will stitch in place a couple of times at the neck with the yarn that will then end up parked inside the head. So you stitch in place 2 or 3 times just to anchor your threads, and then I bring it through the head, and I like to bring it out and to then take my felting needle and just felt those ends in so that I know that that end is permanently secured now. So there's our panda with the head attached to the body, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, which is to pull down on those stitches to just shape it a little bit more. So the panda is ready for the snout to be stitched on. So that will be the next thing, and then the ears. And of course, pandas have the distinctive eye patches, and so I'll show you how I do the eye patches too. So that will be the next segment. The next step is to sew the teddy bear's arms on. I showed how to stuff and shape the arms in the video segment about making the arms, about weaving them, and so now it's time to stitch them on. I'm just pulling through one end of a chunk of yarn, and I'm going to take the other end through. Oh, I should take it through from the same side. Okay, so I'm going to take the other end through, and then I will even up the ends and pull it so that the arm has the loop of yarn on it. Oh, and the panda is wearing a very fetching hairdo right now because this yarn is going to be become the foundation for its ears, and it was just in the way and catching on things. So I'm just going to stick the needle through and come out the other side. I'm going through at the shoulder point there. Need to pull on those ends because I need them to come all the way out. And I'm going to go through the armpit of the other arm and back through and come out at the same place on the bear's body and pull on that to pull the arms in, and that'll squish the shoulder area in. And then I will go through the again about the same, close to the same place as I went through on the first pass, and out to the back. I just pulled that right through, and now again through the body. This is when sometimes it's good to use needle nose pliers if you're finding it's hard to do that. And come as close to where you did the first set of stitches through the body. And I'm just going to make another pass back. And the third and final pass through. So into the armpit of the bear, really as close as you can get to the initial pass through, and through the body and out, ouch, and into my thumb. Good one. Okay, and through and in, and now I'm going to, this time I'll just take it through and come out at the back. Yeah, starting to need to use that needle nose pliers, and I didn't bring them close to the camera. Okay, and oops, I seem to have caught, darn, I've caught the collar. Let's see if I can encourage that to come out. Not very easily. Oh well, these things happen. C'est la vie. Okay, and I will now take a stitch on the back, another stitch, and then I'm going to weave through, because I want to anchor this quite firmly. And oh, there's a bit of funny stitching there. I can cover that up with the black thread. There, tidy up a bit of messiness at the same time. Yay! Always for the win. Okay, and oh gosh, I've pulled a chunk of the weight yarn out. So what I'm going to do is take that back in and through and pull up there. That kind of went back in nicely, and I'll snip that, and I'm going to get my oh, it's not here. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. my felting needle, and I just want to make sure that I have anchored that bit of stitching that I just did there. And stitch in where that went through, and try and encourage the collar to lie down nicely. I think it probably won't do that until I'm actually totally finished. But there, now we've got the arms on. So the next stage is, once you've got the arms on, is to get the muzzle or snout or nose stitched on. So you pull on the, I took the ends, this end through the middle of the nose, through those up the one side, one long side, and then I went through a couple of times just to secure those gathers. And now you're going to grab a little bit of stuffing and hold it inside. So the nose is kind of a semicircle, and it goes onto the face, kind of, you hold it and squish it so it kind of puffs out. But don't bring the short edges together. You want that to be kind of a, like I said, a semicircle, or yeah, semicircle. A puffy semicircle. Okay, so I'm just going to grab some of these ends. And if you find it challenging to get the nose to stay in place, let me just come a little closer here. If you find that to be a little bit odd and challenging, then by all means grab some short straight pins and stick them in to hold the nose in place. I've done this so often that I can do it now just by pinching the nose into place and stitching through and catching those edge stitches onto the face, and stop and look and see, is that looking good? And if it is, keep going, and if it isn't, change it, pull it out and redo it. Okay, I'm going to just do a couple of more stitches here, and then see, I'm feeling pretty pleased with the way that nose is looking. So I'm going to keep working. Now this piece of yarn, I am running close to the end here, playing yarn chicken with that. So I'm going to just weave that in and then just tuck that in with the rest of the yarn. I mean, with the rest of the stuffing. And I will now start at this corner. Luckily I have 2 strands here. Oh, or more. And I will continue to pinch and push the nose into place and keep stitching it. Ouch. And try to not impale yourself. It's not required. Okay. So I'm taking my needle right through and across, and I'll do a couple of securing stitches down here to lock those ends in. And then take that yarn inside the nose and push that back in. There we go. And now just that last little opening bit down under the chin here is just stitched in. The edges are, you go back into the bottom of the chin and stitch over. And if you need to cover up some opening there under the chin, that's just fine. And again, take the ends and secure them by stitching in place, and then take the ends inside the nose. So I usually do at least 2 stitches to secure, and then come across, and if the yarn comes out on the other side, go back in, sometimes leading with the eye of the needle just to get that end inside there, and you can push that end back in. Now you pinch and squeeze the nose into shape. So that's how you do the teddy bear nose. Now I have some more ends to weave in, so I'll weave these ends in, and I'll get the panda bear nose stitched on, and then I will show you how to do the eye patches for the panda and the ears.